Hey. Do you care where anyone sits?
Yeah. No.
You really ought to.
Chairman.
Hey Nat, how are ya?
How are you?
Good.
Good.
What are you up to?
Yeah, not much.
No?
No. Just little conservancy stuff. I gotta leave early today, unfortunately. So I hope you make a decision before I come.
You doing any traveling?
Have been.
For fun, I hope.
We were in Croatia.
We are live.
Oh my gosh.
Poster.
And the mics are live.
Deny.
Oh.
Hey guys,
Okay.
we're live streaming and the mics are live.
What took you
So
there?
as you're talking
John.
personal stuff.
I had an old childhood friend who organized the trip.
Wow, that's
This
awesome.
goes back like 70 years.
I love that.
So I
Mics
said,
are
why
live
not?
and
you know?
recorded on the internet.
Awesome. Like it. Got it.
Great. If I'd have known that, I might not have came.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Mitch Bass, Chair of the Tree Canopy Committee. So we've got a full agenda, so we'll get rolling. I want to introduce for everyone sitting out there who everybody is at the table. And then we'll go through the agenda. So
I'm Chris Courtney. I'm the village engineer.
I'm John Keane. I'm the Service Forestry Coordinator for Northern Ohio for the DNR division.
Adam Beekler, I'm a consulting forester that worked on the RFP.
Mitch Bass.
I'm David Atten. I'm a council member.
Holly Matthews, landowner. Resident.
Eric Carlson, also a resident.
Nathaniel Smith, member of the tree.
I thought we'd start off, at least so everyone understands how we took this through the bid process and kind of the initial timelines. I'll start off a little bit and then I'll have Chris explain kind of what course we took, and Adam as well, because they both ended up delivering out. But the Tree Canopy Committee, we've met as a group 8, 9, 10 times or so, I'd say. We've done various field work with the help of John at various sites. University School did is actually currently underway with an invasive control project. We went out to Holden Arboretum, and we've done 2 driving tours with John to identify various properties, which is how we ended up with some of the locations that were finally chosen. And we also met with Chagrin River Watershed Partners here in this room and did a site visit. I see Josh back there. Josh, thanks. He's with Chagrin River Watershed Partners, yes. And then after we identified what we felt were the biggest opportunities in the village with John's help, we set up a bid process, which is where Chris and Adam led that initiative, building out the criteria for that. So I don't know if you want to speak about it or.
Before I got it, to put together the bid package and solicit public bids, Adam put together information that was provided to us that we then distilled into what would be considered a standard bid package that the village would produce for any sort of publicly bidded, publicly advertised project. The thinking at council and through the committee was wanted to do the best job possible to make sure we got an apple to an apple to an apple, and not a bunch of proposals that were formatted the way the contractors wanted to format them so that they were difficult to compare to each other. So we developed a standardized bid package with information from Adam and the Tree Canopy Committee. We then published a legal advertisement on cleveland.com on 2 consecutive Thursdays. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting for any contractors that were interested and picked up specifications packages. We had that last Wednesday, actually, where we went over any questions any of the contractors had while they were all in the same room, so they all heard the same thing at the same time. We then took a site tour of each site, allowed them again to ask questions in the presence of each other, so everybody heard the same thing at the same time. Once that was concluded, that meeting was about 2 hours long. They then had a couple more days to prepare their bids, and then we had a public bid opening last Friday at noon, where the bids were due by noon, and then we opened them and publicly read them aloud, so any of the contractors could hear each other's numbers and inspect each other's bids. That did not happen. It was Mr. Atten and myself that were in attendance at that, keep each other honest at that bid opening meeting, and then and then I prepared some bid summary documents and submitted that to the Tree Canopy Committee in advance of tonight's meeting for the purposes of discussion.
Adam, you want to just kind of touch on what went into the RFP?
Yeah, basically, we were just brought on board to develop the RFP. What went into that was some site evaluations to determine the magnitude of the invasive species that were present. And then it laid out the standards that needed to be met in order to I guess justify a completed job at the end of the work, and the processes that they needed to use when working on village properties.
I also missed one person, Cleveland Metro Parks Invasive Control Coordinator, Jennifer Hilmer is back there as well. So Jennifer and her colleague, Jennifer Breisler, also have participated in all of our educational events, as well as provided feedback on the bids, because one of the sites, maybe some of you know, includes 6 acres of Metro Park property heading north on Chagrin River Road. So, any questions from anyone here so far about how we put this all together, or before we forward? Concerns? So I think an important thing that we've all heard is how the project's going to be managed and overseen. And we want to make sure all the partnerships that we've tried to establish and that will be involved here with the Gates Mills Land Conservancy were present. And Adam's role in this not only was to write the RFP, but he's going to work alongside with the selected vendor to do site inspections and follow up to make sure they're doing what they say they're going to do, as well as it might take a little while, but through ODNR, we're going to have a memorandum that John will also oversee and look on their behalf and inspect and make sure it's meeting the standards of the same type of projects that John inspects on a federal and state level on a daily basis, as well. So. Anyone have any thoughts, concerns, questions on that? Yeah, if you can come up to the mic if you want, or, okay. That's our exact, thank you for coming. It's exactly our goal. We're kicking off this pilot project with all these partnerships to demonstrate exactly what invasive control is and looks like and educate folks. Because between Gates Mills, the Land Conservancy, and Metro Parks, there's still north of 75 to 80% is controlled by private landowners. And so if we're not educating and teaching, this will just be a pilot project. And so you're exactly who we're targeting and looking to educate and teach about what it means to manage invasives and the species on your property and bringing natives in and controlling the noms. So.
Just add something. Just backing up since you're new, over the 3 years ago, the village started a comprehensive plan to evaluate whether we were happy with the way the village was and what we wanted to be when it grew up. And the result of that process was that vast majority of villagers want the village to stay pretty much the way it is. And the feature they like the most about the village is the greenness, the tree canopy, the natural environment, which provides the secrecy, the peace that they want to have where they live. And we realized that it's not enough just to say, well, this is beautiful, let's leave it alone. That's not enough, because things are happening naturally and people are doing things, developing and so on, that have worked against that. And our tree canopy has been declining. We have a lot of good information that shows that the tree canopy has declined and continues to decline in the village. And we've got to try to preserve what we have and enhance what we already have. So this is the kind of carry on from the comprehensive plan, which was a broad gauge thing covering lots and lots of topics for a couple of years, where lots of villagers participated. And this is what came out of that process. So we're just continuing on from that initial comprehensive plan, now paying attention to the highest priority that villagers put on aspects of the village they love. On the website. If you can't find it, give me a call. We'll talk about it. Thank you.
And a big portion of why Adam and John are sitting at the table and Jen and Josh is, depending on where your property is located, it might abut to a Gates Mills Land Conservancy property, it might be in an area of potential collaboration with your neighbors. And these folks understand all the pathways and the resources that are available to assist private landowners, which we know is going to be the greatest impact, to make a difference here. So they're all great resources and they're amazing individuals to work with, and this is what they do every single day. Mayor?
First stage, we'll get done. There'll be two stages first year. One during the dormancy, one during the full year. That's basically always an ongoing thing. So as things are accomplished, they have to be visited and not nearly to the level that they were the initial year, but
The proposal that was made was a 3-year commitment from the village financially. We started with bid proposals at 1 year so that we could monitor the work and make sure things are unfolding correctly. Plus, if prices go up or down, we wanted didn't want to lock someone in. And we had all the parcels individually bid so that we understood the cost and I guess procedures or processes that they were going to administer on each parcel because they all are unique. We're going to once we re-meet as a committee and make a suggestion to council on who to go with, it's going to be one vendor for all 4 parcels, but we wanted to kind of understand it on the micro level, not just have one broad bid.
for those of you private landowners who have some acres, there are some conservation programs currently quite well funded. Go some acronyms at you. The NRCS is Natural Resource Conservation Service. They are charged with taking money that is appropriated through the Farm Bill to put conservation practices on the ground in communities. So their job is to get the money from Washington to the landowner. Our ODNR Division of Forestry assists them with the program, all the forestry work for that program. The program is called the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. We use the acronym EQUIP. You will hear that a lot. Eventually, it will become common language if you decide to apply for that program and try to utilize the funds to do work on your own property. that is something I would strongly encourage. I'm hoping we have another meeting relatively soon for a larger group, private landowner village, because the deadline for application for that program is January 31st. This particular year, they have quite a bit of funds to distribute, to the point where we're having a little bit of difficulty assisting with all the gaps. But one of our goals with this pilot project here was to allow the residents to visualize what this work looks like, so that they can then decide, okay, you won't be able to see it yet, but we're hoping the next 2 years or see, but it will be time to apply for your property. There's no acreage for one, for each. I would strongly suggest those of you who are committed to trying and improve your properties, and we do have a huge issue in the village. I've got a selfish goal. I would like this community, because you have a good base, you have a good forested base that could be enhanced considerably. I would like to educate the group, educate the landowners, so they can see what benefits they will get taking care of their forest land, and then hopefully use that long-term model.
You want to talk about the uniqueness of this project for Gates Mills as a municipality versus
Oh,
what you see out
yes,
there?
this is very unique. I mean, Sandra and I have worked together for many years on a variety of topics. And this has just become a kind of a full circle project, convincing council and others that have a good thing here. Let's try to enhance it as much as possible, because it is in decline, as David said. And a lot of it are the problems with invasive species that are doing damage, and doing damage to the natural flora and fauna. So there are ways to control that. That's what we're going to try to do. Well, typically, and I'll say, using the EQIP program, we, as a division, typically set up a landowner's property for 3 consecutive years of treatment. They graduated down in the cost they pay per year, and it's based on what we as foresters assess the problem. We put a value per acre. It's, okay, here's what it's going to cost year 1, 2, and 3. Here's what they'll get. And then, but after that, I will tell you, because I've done this on my own property in Geauga County, it does take some annual maintenance. And now Holden Arboretum has done extensive work on how much that takes as far as hours of labor, all that kind of stuff. But they are a partner. They have the information. They will share on what it takes. But I don't want you to ever think that it goes away. Seed bases last many, many, many years, continually come up. So it is a thing. It gets better, but it never goes away. So that's kind of have to get your mind set on that. It's just like if you want grass in the yard, you got to keep mowing. Same kind of thing. And to me, this area with the assets you have in the forest, and lots of people put a lot of money in landscaping their yard and leave their forest alone. It doesn't work. So, well, in my opinion, it's well worth the investment to do this work and continue to learn about what you can do to make it aesthetically better, wildlife habitat friendly, natural fauna friendly. But there's a learning curve.
2 words that come to mind are, to make this successful, we've got to persevere and we have to be patient. There are no quick results. And you've got to take the long view, which is sometimes difficult for a municipality that has to have a budget every year and make things balance and so on. So sustaining that long-term view, the patience that requires, and the perseverance it takes to pursue that objective are two words I've got tattooed on my rear whatever for this project.
And there will be different stages. So the initial stage, which our plan is to kick off winter work or very early spring before the growing season. And we did that intentionally because most people in the village thought it's all green, it's all good. There will be some sections that are browned out, cut down, removed, that people see and go, well, what are you doing? Are you clearing land for something, or whatever can be thought of? But so there's stages in it, and it to David's point, it takes time. And one of the parcels down the street next to the garden club that is very heavy with invasives, there's likely a strategy, it's called a forest mulcher will be used on that parcel because it's so thick and the access is so difficult. And they actually will grind up all that material this winter. And so people might look and go, well, what are they doing? Are they building there? Well, you have to remove it before we start putting back the habitat and planting and getting native species in there to keep the invasives out that have literally taken over that entire parcel. So if you look up at the trees, they nearly don't exist there anymore. So again, it's going to take time. That we all know they don't grow overnight. So there'll be areas in Feller Field around the perimeter. There's some very dense areas, so that'll open up and have a very different look than what people are used to seeing. So there will be some changes.
One other unique aspect of our village is not only have we inherited a beautiful green natural environment, we also have a levy that every year raises from taxpayers in the village, real estate taxpayers, over about $250,000 a year, and has to be dedicated to conservation. And so this fits right into that kind of funding. So, and that money can only be used on conservation. It can't be used on anything else. And so it's isolated money, it's identified money, earmarked for this kind of effort. So we're very fortunate. We have the raw material and we have the funding. But as you know, the levy only lasts for 5 years, and will be up for re-voting in November of 26, I think it is. So that's where we are.
What's the methodology of this process? So that
We allowed the bidders, we identified the parcels, there was all standardized maps, standardized acreages, standardized items that could be used. And then we allowed each of the bidders to provide a written description of how they would go about this two-step process of attacking the invasive species on each parcel, with some sort of winter work, early spring work, followed up by some growing season work. And then each one of the bidders submitted a written explanation of how they would attack it. They're slightly different, but they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
like curiosity.
No, fine, no.
How about people?
It's thinking about the parcels. None of the parcels are particularly hilly. So I don't think we're gonna run into like removing vegetation, having with like hillside erosion. You're gonna be getting rid of a lot of green. Hopefully a lot of that is done in the winter when it's not green, so it won't be as much of a shock system of like pulling down a wall or 40 feet of vine that are now brown. But some of we'll see in the summer, if you have to do what's called a foliar spray, so spray on the leaves, that will brown some areas out. So the work that was done at University School, which they did this fall,
They came in and sprayed, and it's usually the edge area. So like the edge of Feller Field where it touches Casewell Boulevard, Privet and stuff in there, they spray those shrubs and they do brown up and they look like, hopefully they're dead. So you'll see that the Arboretum piece down here as it's close to the water, I think most of the vendors adjusted their herbicides for water safe because it is close to the river. The only thing that they could potentially, and I don't know how big some of the mulching is, this compaction of soil, but you know, sometimes there's a necessary evil to be able to take care of things. You know, I don't like driving my lawnmower on my grass and compacting it, but I got to cut it somehow, and I can't do it with scissors. So there's some component of that that's just going to have to happen.
And the village does have erosion and sediment control ordinances in place. They typically kick in when there is some sort of earth disturbing activity, which is getting into the ground more so than the methods that are prescribed here with just vegetation removal. And any grinding of material is going to be above the ground. There shouldn't be anything that's going to be tearing up the roots, tearing up the ground surface, which would trigger either a abbreviated stormwater pollution prevention plan, which would be for something under an acre, or a full stormwater pollution prevention plan, and then a permit from the EPA for construction site stormwater activities, which would be for over an acre. But the types of methods prescribed here do not rise to that level, so we shouldn't have erosion problems.
Although we didn't prescribe the methods that should be used, we were trying to achieve an objective. So we defined the objective and left it to the contractors to tell us how they chose to do it. And they were remarkably similar, actually. It's not secret, we received 3 bids, and they were generally very similar techniques, small differences, but nothing that I would call fundamental.
And after we received the bids, we've sent them all out to the partners we've introduced that have all provided feedback and amongst everyone sitting at the table. And everyone's feedback is very similar in nature as well to the techniques and the concerns on their own individual parcels and who their preferences on who they'd like to have worked on. Any other questions, comments this time?
Understand the process. But is there anything you can kind of get the data to kind of sort of that bring up and what the can do or what have they talked about?
That's an important question. Not a darn thing this committee could have done about that storm, believe me. If we'd have run out in our jammies, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. This is all about trying to make the tree canopy more secure. A lot of the trees that we lost were trees that were weak because they hadn't been properly cared for. And they were suffering from the attacks of invasives. I mean, a number of trees came down that had been infested with grapevine, which makes them weaker. So there was nothing we could do about that. But down the road, the belief is that strong trees, big trees, can defend themselves against storms to the best effect possible. And it's not, we can't sensibly argue that we can stop any storm damage, but we can reduce it, certainly.
I might add to that, what we're talking about here is a pilot. First stage of the pilot, there is no funding of this pilot replanting. That will be after third. And we hope at some point that we will be able to bring programs to the community at large that would help you plant trees. We haven't figured that out yet, so that's a little bit down the road. I don't think that we will get to the point where we take responsibility for down trees and private property. That will always be private property. Sure. Responsibility. But I think what we can do is provide resources for you to reclaim. So that's one of.
And one of the things that I've thought about is, because I have trees at my property that it's a tree and there's mowed grass all around, right? If that falls down, nothing's gonna replace it unless I plant. But a naturally regenerating forest, which is a lot of what we're targeting here, if a tree falls down, we got a bunch of little baby trees just waiting for that sunlight to pop up. Now, the issue that we have with invasives is they're also waiting for that sun. And so that's where we're trying to get those knocked down so that when we have events like that and our tree canopy gets disturbed, that's a natural regenerating process and one that we can keep the bad guys out. But it can potentially be a spot where if particular landowners like, I lost an acre of blowdown, and you're concerned, then this is the partner group that you would contact, be like, is it gonna be okay? Or is it gonna be filled with invasives in 2 years? And that might be something that we'd be able to, point you to in the right direction or come out, check out. Cause I've got that issue, that storm.
So at this time, the open space has
Yes.
to be X number.
Jennifer? Celeste? Yes. No intentional, existing structures are planning to be removed anywhere.
Tree of heaven,
What's that?
tree of heaven.
Right. Well, that's intentional. Right.
Um, Well, I would say this, a lot of them are gonna vacate the area just based on the noise and all these animal species are resilient. And they're gonna find other home sites. And most of these invasive thickets, would be considered extremely low quality habitat. And the reason they're being utilized is because that's the only thing that they have. So I would say the fact that we're getting rid of what would be considered low quality habitat and in a relatively short period of time, creating what would be considered high quality habitat. If there is the off chance that there might be a casualty from some of the work, I think that's probably extremely low, although I don't have any research to back that up. I think the end product's going to be a tremendous improvement in the quality of habitat that these animals have.
I think the timing of the year is on the animal side. 'Cause it seems like the most of the big cuttings and brushwork are being done in the winter. And you're not getting nesting birds disturbed at that point. So that is beneficial to doing it in this time.
Yeah, we're also not getting amphibians, and it's approximately 60 acres. There's 5,700 acres in the village approximately. So we're talking about less than 1% area. So, you know, if it's loud and messy here, it's not right next door. So hopefully that adjacency will help us.
Oh,
And, you know, the world comes back that they like simple plan. Yeah. They had no way. After that, the bird, I, they're pretty right. So there's a lot of them worried that
I don't know if we've talked about communication yet, but a big part of this is communicating with the residents and especially the people who are immediately surrounding the properties that are in the pilot project. So, that would be something we do from the beginning on through articles in the pink sheet, the land conservancy, but again, direct communication with the affected landowners. And we also have a plan to put up, signage so anybody that's driving by can see what's going on there. So that's a big piece of it because again, we know that this pilot project is just a very small percentage of the whole village property, and ultimately it's going to be residents who support this and carry it out. Exactly.
Yeah,
No, that's the intent.
there's going to be at the Land Conservancy annual meeting, the woman from the Menor Marsh came and gave us talk about their restoration efforts. And I thought one of the impactful things was they knocked door to door to explain to everyone exactly what was going to be done. And so our plan in this before we kick off is to make sure any properties that face the area or adjoining to some type of direct communication, whether it's in a mailbox or knocking door to door, speaking with them directly on the phone to let them know, ask any questions or concerns. There will be direct signage at the street level, letting people know, and then there'll also be an email and phone number communication into the village for any concerned folks that either we missed or just were generally interested to ask any questions that they can reach out. So
I guess the byword is we want no one to be surprised. So as an old pastor used to say, I knew it where I grew up. He said, you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. And by the third one, they probably know what's going to happen. So education is important, so there are no surprises, and that minimizes bad response.
To add to that, we do have many natural resource professionals, a lot of different people. I have wildlife biology, physical wildlife, who I know would come and address any concern to at a meeting or in the field at a work. So we have the resource. Please don't hesitate to bring up any concern, and we'll address them and get the right to address them. We have many partners, some of the big players, region, that's part, and Springer for Watershed Partners, and there are many more that will be interested in the whole project once they see it moving. So just know that when you have concern, address it. Right.
I think, oh, I have it like that. You have to.
No. Yeah, I can't do that. But there are people doing that. Holden Arboretum is good. Cleveland Metro Park is good. Some of their sites, they've got baseline data, different species of wildlife, anything. So the information is out there and it's recent. So if we needed to, we could get them come talk about what they found. That would have the resource, but specifically with this project, we assume we're going to get the same result.
The project down at University School, they are doing pre, during, and post, at least from a plant perspective. And so I'm being a member of the faculty there, like involved in that. And this project and this commission actually worked quite quickly. And so never was there the intention of conducting a research study on it, but moved very efficiently. And so we kind of missed our window to do any pre-work because everything looks like it does now. But like you said, like, you know, every expectation that we're going to get positive outcomes on the plant, animal, insect, bird, everything.
Again, remember, we're only dealing in this pilot program with 60 acres out of almost 6,000 acres in the village at large. So it's a very small piece of the total potential, obviously. And this is a pilot scheme. This is not the answer. This is the beginning of the solution.
And we hope to engage residents. So, you know, you and I have talked, Peter, if it's yourself or others in the village that have expertise in that and want to help and support what we're doing, you know, we don't want to go at this on our own, for sure.
But what kind of ideas do you have for residents? Right now you have whatever contract. There, kind of things, education wise and for just hands on, that feels part of it. But think talk about it.
Yeah. John's always told us, until people get in there and get their hands on this stuff and understand what they're even looking at, it's not going to be effective. I mean, we could all talk about all the resources available. We don't have the exact strategy. I think that's stage 2 in all this, but we absolutely realize that if we're not out there doing exactly what you're asking, it's not going to be successful.
I plan to workshop on the resident grant. We'll go out in the field, look at take a look, see what's happening. I'd love to I actually tried to get the committee to do a little project itself to see what it was actually like, try to tackle. the problem. We didn't get involved. But it's good to show the residents, you go out and look, you have to look, you'll much better understand it. If you watch it happen, I would encourage all whoever has a strong interest in this, pay attention and ask. Time to educate. That's on the side of ODNR. That is my biggest education. So got to convince you, then move forward. Then it won't last long term. But believe in it. I keep that head. Have to come back to yourself. That's the right thing. The way to do that is to show it to you.
We're taking before and after pictures of some of the sites, right?
Yeah, so, a little bit of insight to your question, maybe about the storm too. Our group's organized, we've taken still shots from the road view, and we use the, village drone to document everything from the sky. And then,
Just to correct it, the Valley Enforcement Group, the village doesn't own a drone. But,
Yeah.
yeah, that's gonna be the next call. Can I borrow
Yeah.
your drone?
Yeah.
It's the Valley Enforcement Group. It's a SWAT team and they have a bunch of drones and they were very gracious in sending the sergeant over to do aerial views of these pilot projects. So our intent is to do it kind of before and during.
we have also, the county, has collected data on the tree canopy in 2011 and 7. And, we have that down to the parcel level. That will be sort of our next stage in organizing actually where the canopy loss has been in the village. And then, we're also, in discussions with a contractor that does, maybe you can just, I know it's jumping a little bit ahead in the agenda, but it's the group on here called Planet ITGO that.
Yeah, so the group, unfortunately for us, the timing of when they do canopy assessments is at the discretion of the, was it NRCS or?
The county in this case.
Yeah, the county. So when they actually take the images and calculate canopy and other land cover types, we would like to have had one now or soon after, but we don't know when the next one's going to be necessarily. So we have 2 years of data, and we'd like to have a third as close as possible. Kind of trend, right? I'm a scientist, and we like more data points to figure out what's going on. So we've been in talks with a partner, and they're one of many that can do this type of work, where they could potentially get us another year's worth of data, and also do the land cover assessment of identifying what is canopy, what is not. So they can track, if we've lost 5%, have we gained 1%, have we lost 17%, and where that is happening. So we can see, we can go in, our village is small enough that we can actually look at those hot spots of change, say, oh, we're gaining some back here, or we're losing some because there was development along this particular section. Or was it a house? Was it a business? Was it parking lots? And we can see, because from 2011 to 2014, that's 13 years. A lot can happen in 13 years. The thing that I would like to see with that, if possible, with the work that we're doing with invasives, is green doesn't mean good necessarily. So just because we have canopy, did we gain 25 acres of canopy, but it's all tree of heaven? That's not ideal. And so that's some of the stuff that we're trying to look at to see what they can do. And it seems like some of the work that they've proposed is reasonable and that benefit us in that idea of this is long-term assessment that we need to make and track.
Yeah, like a lot of areas we're all familiar with, technology is advancing very, very quickly, which means not only can they do a better job, it costs less because these things are getting increasingly efficient. So there are amazing developments going on out there that we want to tap into if we possibly can. And as the price comes down, we can maybe afford more than we could have done a couple of years ago. So It's all moving in the right direction.
One thing, I was actually about to touch on that with Celeste as well. Most of the techniques being used, are, everything's gonna be hand cut except for Merkle. And so, and most of that brush is gonna be left on the site, and it takes, what, 3 to 5 years, couple heavy snowpacks, maybe a little less.
It'll be
It's
a lot
pretty,
quicker than that.
it's pretty woody debris. So through that process, actually habitat will be created, at least for a period of time as well. It just won't be standing habitat like we see now. So, and then to answer your question, that debris gets, it's mulch, just like mulch you almost lay down in your yard, but a little bit chunkier and more regular and certainly not dyed. So it doesn't go, I mean, yes, there's going to be some disturbance of the seed bank, but I think like Jen brought up, and you know, if you want to talk about it further, it's going to stimulate native restoration that's sitting in the soil, but they're not grinding into the soil. It's really more at the surface level and reaching up as far as a bobcat can go, you know, 8-10 feet. So Jen, you want to add to that?
I will.
Yeah, I would say the need for a forestry mower means things have really gone down. That's like the last, you can't physically do other methods. So when I saw that in there, I thought that there's areas I saw before. There are sites that physically cannot treat any other.
I think it's fair to say, Adam, isn't it, that of the 4 lots, of the 4 sites we've got, the contractor who's likely to win the bid, don't yet like to, is only contemplating mulching on one of the sites.
Yeah, the land conservancy
Right, the
property.
land conserv, which is by far the worst site we've got in
Yeah.
terms of infestation with invasives of those 4 sites.
On the fourth site, are there areas, smaller areas on the site where they actually get residents come in and for hand to help in the process, or designate some other small site that educate and continue the process
That's possible. I'll tell you, in my experience, one is they're using herbicides potentially, which can be dangerous. I think it's probably actually a really wonderful idea because most of the landowners that I work with that say I'm going to do this myself last about an hour. And then they're like, this is absurd. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. So it'll probably be a pretty rapid learning curve there, to show people, just how serious of an issue there is out there, and that it's probably not something that, we can deal with volunteers.
But I mean, there are programs.
Yeah.
You can, right, cut stuff down.
Follow up.
On small areas. Is that something that you guys want to consider? Educate, help understand.
We have done that.
Yeah.
Conservancy at the Sherman Road Reserve, and we brought school kids in, we brought citizens in, and I can tell you that has not been hugely effective, helped a little bit, but you have to have license applicated time, because you're cutting this hardwood basic, got to treat it well. And so, at least initially, remember, this is a pilot. And so what we're thinking is this is where you start to get the community educated. And my guess is when we have a meeting a year, we will have 3 or 4 times the same people, because they will have seen what's going on. And that's the process with it. So will we use volunteers at some point? Maybe. But this one, we just want community.
Yeah, my suggestion would be that perhaps in year 2, consider it on a small parcel as a separately designated project. There's all kinds of additional liability concerns that come along with contractor, herbicide, heavy equipment, chainsaws. I think mixing a contractor and a bunch of volunteers in those things is a recipe for a potential problem. If there is a small area that's designated and selected for the ability to do handwork and then follow up with spraying that can be observed by residents, help them to identify and attack certain kinds of invasives, that might be the best opportunity to do that.
Let the professionals get started and
Yeah.
then we can teach the amateurs how to do it.
I think it's a good suggestion if we can find a way to incorporate it. Because when we did have people come to Sherman Road Preserve and we did it over years, it wasn't many people. But we did some work up there, and people, again, like to get their hands in the dirt. And I've already had people volunteer that, let me know the outcome of this meeting. I'm going to come with my chainsaw. I'm ready, ready to help. So we certainly don't want to discourage that, but we want to keep people safe, and we want this to be successful.
But the contractors we're selecting are focused on education as well. And so they want to support teaching the residents how to do this and educate them along with the folks that are here. So,
Well, it's something that, in a small area that's highly visible, right? The Arboretum is right here with some very interesting species, but it being a bottomland forest there, that might be a place where not at the same time, but in between treatments. So between the winter and the summer, springtime, right? Go pick garlic mustard, because it's not going to be there in the summer anyway to be sprayed. And there might be some treatment that could be done around a species that you want to protect, give the contractors a buffer where they don't have to go near the pawpaws, because the residents have cleared out that area that's the size of this room. And that's reasonable. And they can focus on that. They can see their work when they come back later, see how well it's done. But like I said, I don't think, can't mix them at the same time. That's bad. That's a situation.
You want to work though, we'll
Yeah, I live up on Battles, so.
2 hours, right, John? Not 1.
Yeah, so we're going to get. Are we going to get?
Yeah, we'll trade. We'll trade.
Are we going to get to the bids?
oh yeah. So, any further discussion or anything else? Anyone? Yes?
Get a lot more.
John's been working with us for years. He said that at the beginning when I first came in. I mean, under a couple of administrations, you know, he's been nursing us along and it's finally caught fire. So he's the grandfather of our project.
Just to discuss the bids quickly, because I know Adam needs to leave in a few minutes, so if people had directed questions for that. I sent out to all the partners in the room and the folks around the table. We removed the even though it is public, so anyone can go down and get them from City Hall, I believe. Who the 3 bids we received from and the costs. I removed that component to just get some non-biased feedback on who we felt we should move forward with. And so the 3 groups are Davy Resource Group was the one of the final bidders. Better Woods, Better Meadows and Woodlands, and Grand River Forestry. And so again, we've talked about them a little bit, but again, they all presented bids for each parcel individually, as well as sort of a holistic scope on timing. Our goal was, Adam laid out a 75% knockdown of invasives within the first year, and they all agreed that they could get there. And it's going to be through split treatments. There will be an extensive amount of winter work, like Jen noted, for to limit the herbicides being sprayed, and for aesthetic purposes, so our village doesn't get browned out in the spring. And everyone that provided feedback agreed with that strategy. And then in the mid to late summer-ish, I think, was it July, September?
June through September.
June through September, there will be the follow-up full year application, like Jen mentioned, on all the parcels. So all of them presented relatively the same methodology from that perspective. Better Meadows, Woodlands.
BMW.
Yeah, BMW.
Better than a Volkswagen.
Yep.
For sure.
They were the individuals that proposed just mulching on the Gates Mills Land Conservancy parcel. And otherwise, all the work will be completed by hand. They use some interesting processes. They have GPS trackers on all the people doing their work, and we actually witnessed it. They're the ones at University School doing all the work. And so you can actually see exactly where all their people have treated and gone. And they provided an extensive map and layout. They walked, I think, almost every acre that was bid and laid out all the heavy areas, and some species follow-up, not as extensive as some of the other groups. So, we're going to go back and just make sure that's, we want to make sure who we select is equivalent to everybody's feedback from a professionalism, communication standpoint, and most importantly, plant ID species. So we're not just nuking everything. And what else? The Grand River Group, they're more aggressive with their forestry mower. And so they propose doing it on the Gates Mills Land, actually all, not in the
Land Conservancy and the corridor along the Chagrin River, which would have been the 6 acres of Metro Parks ground.
right.
The main concern there with Better Meadows was probably wet there, the soil.
Grand River.
Well, the reason that Better Meadows said they didn't want too much
right,
there was that the soil composition is probably softer. You might have a little bit more impact with the machine in there. Although I could honestly get on board if they wanted to mulch in there.
Jen and her team did provide some feedback that their preference would be to do hand cutting in that area just because of the soils and delicate nature, as well as making sure we're attacking just the targeted species in that area, which is porcelain berry primarily. So our goal is at least under the area of that 6 acres with the Cleveland Metro Parks, they would like some level or as much as we can preservation of the grapevine to keep the porcelain berry out and protect some of the other invasives coming back. We all know grapevine is native, it's just invasive native. So, you know, in working with them, you know, we want to make sure we're respecting their goals on the land as well.
Can you share with us the dollar bid?
Sure. Yeah.
I will say this real quick about these 3 companies are all highly professional. They're all extremely experienced, and they all have the applicator license. So from that perspective, if you just took dollars out of it, they're all highly qualified to do this work.
I apologize, I don't have Chris's tabulation up, but Davy Tree was 116,000.
Better Meadows and Woodlands was about 35,000. The Grand River Forestry was about 65. And Davy was about 149.
Yes.
So we got a pretty good spread.
Say the least.
Right. For, and,
That's common, actually.
I've heard that. I've never heard. Yeah, Adam, talk a little bit about the differences, why we might be seeing that.
That's a widespread. Quite traditionally, I'll just say this, that Davy Resource Group has always been significantly higher than everybody else on this type of work. You know, there's a lot of things that go into bidding on jobs. Maybe one company isn't quite filled up for their schedule for the following year, so they might need to work a little bit more. Maybe they'll bid a little bit more aggressively. Maybe Davy Resource Group is completely full for their work schedule, and they say, well, we don't even need this work, but if, you know, we overprice it tremendously and they decide to do it, then it's worth it to them. There's a lot of different things that go into bidding like that. You know, I would just,
Yeah, I'll add.
there's not really a good explanation
I'll add
for it.
one
Chris might be
comment.
able to
I'll add
lend more
one
into that.
comment. It was sometimes in a pre-bid meeting, you find things out about how much time and effort the contractors are putting into preparing the bids. I think that the bids and the pricing are directly proportional to the amount of time that the contractors put in before the pre-bid meeting looking at the sites. It was very obvious that the guy with the low bid, Better Meadows and Woodlands, had spent a lot of time on each site. He was almost giving the other contractors a tour and pointing out to them the things they need to consider with their bids. That's how familiar he was with each site. So I think he found out what he needed to know to unlock the best possible price for the project. The guy in the middle hadn't visited the sites, but was somewhat familiar. And I didn't get the feeling that David spent a lot of time on the sites. They just picked up the bid documents a couple days before the pre-bid meeting. So I think that's a direct reflection on the numbers that came in. Is the guy with the lowest number was most familiar with.
Looking at it from the other end, I think BMW are very aware that this is the beginning of a process.
Very much.
And they want a big piece of the inevitable process that follows. So I think this is a bit of a loss leader for them, I would guess, commercially. And that would explain why they came in so low. But again, we've talked to a number of customers, people are working with now, and their references are all extremely positive, and they're among the very best available. So the best is cheap, which is great.
Well, and one thing too, if you don't spend time on the site, it looks terrible from the edge because the edge is the worst. But if you go into Feller Field, and is that the group that's doing University School?
Yeah.
Yeah, like same thing, like the edges are terrible, but, and I'm very familiar with the University School campus, the interior is amazing and in really good shape. And we have a lot of really good interior areas, especially Feller Field with just being a larger contiguous block. The effort's on the edge, but if all you see is all that effort, you're gonna bid higher. But then you also want the person potentially who really can think about, because they know they gotta go in there and spot treat. They know what they're looking for. So that might also be some of that discrepancy.
Yep.
And that's certainly true with the with the land conservancy property, once you get inside it, you,
And
looks bad.
they all have to meet the basic criteria as well as, I would say, elevated criteria, which includes the Metro Parks property, because they have some elevated criteria even beyond what we were requiring the village. So, again, basic things, insurance, applicator licenses, certain oversight criteria. What was one of the other things you had asked, Jen? She has shared all that, and so we incorporated it and discussed it with the vendors, and they all felt comfortable being able to meet the criteria for your parcel, which, sure. Yeah. No, and just to clarify, the Metro Parks has provided even early on amazing in-kind resources for tree canopy board on previous bid projects they've done, and some guidelines and meeting us at sites and just providing that information has been hugely beneficial, so. And Adam drives a tough ship.
I'll say this about BMW is collectively, they have a ton of experience. But I would say that they're probably one of the premier timber stand improvement companies in the state. And there's no doubt about it.
Yes, yeah, we have we could send you, yeah, we have them detailed to, where the areas are heavy or lighter from an invasive standpoint. We have, geographic boundaries, everything's very better woods and, sorry. Yeah, BMW, provided very detailed spec on the maps, and we have other maps that have been presented to council in various presentations, so.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
aquatic safe.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Well, and then remember, it's primarily shrubby type things. It's not large standing, what we think of as like a tree. Other than tree of heaven, most of the things are going to be shrubby type things it's very easy to identify privet, some of the other ones that are out there.
Yeah,
We
had
actually
we had
talked
a
about that.
discussion with the contractor as well about, in advance, especially the arboretum, knowing that there's some special plant material in there that those, trees would be flagged before they would get in there to do any work, so there could be specifically identified.
We found a couple that I think might be non-native invasives that were planted.
Well,
Yeah.
oh dear. Mitch, you have a vote on this, this meeting contract? You know my vote, in case you are.
Okay. I don't know if we plan to vote.
We all
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we got enough people. So I'll move to approve, Better Meadows and Woodland to do pilot project on, for,
I will second it.
All
on favor.
Next time, bring your friends. This is how it all starts.
And anything else? Anyone has questions, concerns at this point? No? And yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Les. Sugar River Watershed Partners also was successful in helping the village and several private landowners with a massive undertaking to control the riverbanks right underneath the bridge in town and behind the church and some of the areas. So they have experience here, they have success here, and so they're a significant part, what we want to do here. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time and
Those bins were like,
I think the bit I got from my bathroom one, like threefold difference.
yeah.
Or Brian's.
Yeah. The one thing.
Yeah.
We can talk to the real guys.
Yeah.
Probably had Jen had back, or I could just.
Yeah, well, and the amount of overhead
Like about.
can sometimes get reflected. True, yeah.
Well.
It's about 60.
Yep.
Well, it's just, I mean, the thing is like on the 60, not all of it's all look like that.
I know, but it made me hopeful.
Yes.
I really thought.
I'll make sure.
Yeah, that's like.
Anyways.
How you doing?
Oh, they did, yeah. And then, get in the back. I don't know. if Michael's- oh, somewhere in the back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's some. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.